Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 82. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 22 of Goblet of Fire, The Unexpected Task.
Or, as we like to call it, Chaos is a Dance.
But we open up with, the kids, or I should say Harry and Ron goofing off in class. It's almost the Christmas holidays.
Yeah. They're messing around. They're playing with magic wands from Fred and George, as one does. And they're not, doing their readings from the textbook.
Very 14-year-old of them.
And so Minerva, calls them out and then asks them a question about, magic spells and stuff. Specifically, how do transfiguration spells change when transfiguring between species? And honestly, I feel like the author didn't world build deep enough to know the answer to the question she asked in her own book, and J.R.R. Tolkien would have known the answer to the question and the history of the evolution of those spells.
And you want that information.
I do hunger for it. It's true.
And McGonagall has an announcement, and she announces that the Yule Ball will take place on Christmas, and there's a lot of commotion because obviously this is the first dance we've experienced in the series so far, which is a very a grown-up experience, because I feel like dances weren't really a big deal until you were middle school, high school age.
Yeah, it's a big teenage experience for sure. It's a coming of age moment, prom for people like us, or
formal probably.
So yeah, some of the people are very excited about the idea of dancing and dates, such as Lavender and Puberty, and they're giggling. And Harry notices how Minnie G doesn't call the girls out for interrupting class, quite like him and Ron were called out. But I actually think that's the right call, because Harry and Ron were goofing off and just doing silly fun stuff, but the girls were specifically sort of giggling and looking at Harry when the ideas of dates came up. And I feel like that's a much more embarrassing thing to be caught doing, crushing on a boy publicly or giggling about dating. That's a bit more embarrassing for the girls. And if Harry had noticed and had the brain cells to realize they were giggling, specifically looking at him, he would be uncomfortable. And it's one of those the right choice is to not let any of the three people involved be uncomfortable and just pretend like it never happened. So I'm on board with Minnie not calling them out. McGonagall
has done this for a while, so she probably knows that when talking about something like a dance to this age of students, there's gonna be some commotion, and they are paying attention. Harry and Ron weren't paying attention.
Yeah,
they're just kind of giggly about the idea of it, but they're obviously paying attention to what she's saying. Yeah, but Harry's pulled aside by McGonagall, and he thinks he's gonna get in trouble for goofing off, but he's told that he needs to have a partner for this dance because he has to open the dance with his partner in a public dance. And I just feels I get that Harry's a lot younger than the other champions would be 17 doing this, and he's 14, but I just feel it's kind of, I don't know, I don't like the idea of being forced to have a partner to a dance.
I get it.
But I just think it's a lot of pressure to put on a 14-year-old as well. Not only do you have to go to this event and dance, which some people don't like that kind of stuff, but it's also you have to bring someone. So you have to speak to someone and they have to go along with you.
Honestly, I would have rather been killed by the dragon than have to dance in front of the entire school. It is truly a fate worse than death or being expelled.
Yeah, Harry is thinking the same thing. He's thinking, honestly, I think I'd rather go against the dragon. He's not into asking a girl out.
I mean, I've asked girls out before. It can be scary.
Especially at 14, and Harry is not the most confident of boy. And he has a lot going on, too. He's been struggling with this Triwizard Tournament. Voldemort's been out trying to kill him for the last how many years?
14.
Yeah, and, he has a lot going on for the average kid.
He should be watching SpongeBob, honestly. But he doesn't have time for that.
We'll kind of talk more about the Yule Ball in a bit later, but going through the rest of the book, Harry's talking with Hagrid. We find out that Hagrid had his interview with Rita Skeeter. It did happen. It did not get stopped. And all she wanted to do was talk about Harry. Hagrid just told him that, they've been friends for so long, and Harry's a good kid, and Rita's changed her mind about Harry. She wants, the dirt on Harry. She wants Hagrid to tell her some tea.
Shocked. Bamboozled. Could not have possibly predicted it.
And why do we think that Rita changed her angles on Harry? Harry has kind of a theory that it wouldn't be as exciting if she just posted good things about him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, she spins fiction, and in fiction, a static character is boring.
Yeah.
When you're telling a story, which is what she's doing with Harry, it's not a truth. You want dynamic characters, and dynamic characters go through changes. So in her first article, she talks about him, his backstory, so sad, so innocent, sweet boy, terrified, like, and it's boring if he just stays that the whole time. Maybe he got one article about triumphant, win, defeated the dragon, what a guy. But she's spinning a tale. There has to be, character development. And so the option is either to make him extra heroic or to make him, more complicated as a character, which means giving him flaws. So she's trying to get ideas on what flaws to make up for her to make him a more interesting character.
She's basically writing headlines at this point. So the idea of poor orphan Harry sells well because people know his story. But the idea is to then go to something kind of bad, being like, oh, you thought you knew this poor sad orphan Harry? Like, well, actually, he's a terrible kid. He's corrupt.
It's clickbait is what it is. She wants a more clickbaity title, and she's already gotten Tragic Orphan Cries in Tournament, and now she's like, okay, what would really catch people's attention? Tragic orphan, terrible person.
Yeah.
Like she's just going for the readership. She just needs those numbers. So whatever will grab attention.
But Hagrid's such a good egg. He's just like, Harry is the best.
Well, what Hagrid says to Harry, a glowing top-notch 5-star review. Hagrid says, "You're all right, aren't you?" That's his glowing review of Harry Potter. You're all right, aren't you? And Harry's like, "Thanks, Hagrid." And it's just like, that's like you give him a 6 out of 10. Like that's what it feels like, truly. And it's like, yeah, it's not the worst. There's worse kids. You met Draco? Like it's just such a mellow meh sort of like he's okay. So funny. Bless Hagrid. Bless Hagrid's heart.
Well, we have the rest of the students going through the last day of the term before holiday break, and we see that some teachers kind of, slide during the holidays, like Flitwick lets them play games in class and kind of, chill out.
But Binns does not, because he died and he's still teaching. So bless his heart, or lack thereof heart. Bless his ectoplasm. But I think it's so sad that the history professor is boring, because history can be so fun. And I can't even imagine how much cooler magical history is. Like, I have so many questions about like whether or not wizarding historical events that are taught also include the wizarding role in like Muggle events. Like, I'd love to hear about like major, like, what did the wizards do when the Muggles invented nukes? Like, how did they respond to that real? What did they do during World War II? Did they do nothing because Muggle problems, or did they like pick sides and participate? Like, I have so many questions about that I would love to know. And also just the actual exclusively wizarding events. Tell me about the Goblin Wars. I want to know about the Goblin Wars.
Binns probably lived through most of these historical events too.
Yeah, first person like stories from like war. Like,
you never get that from a history teacher.
I just think it's so sad that they have a boring history of magic teacher, because...
Yeah, I do feel like with history, the teacher makes the class for you. So if you love history, you probably had a really good teacher.
Yeah, they can't get rid of him though, right? He already died. Like they don't... He has more than tenure. He has 20-year.
Yeah, how do you fire someone that's a ghost because he just won't leave? Like, does something just keep him there?
Hear me out. Call a Catholic priest, do an exorcism.
But we find out a little tidbits about the U-Ball as things are going on, and the Weird Sisters have been hired. And that's such a great band name.
Woo, my favorite band. Rock on, Weird Sisters.
And while they're kind of off on their holidays, Ron and Harry are, goofing off, not really, doing much. And Hermione's like, Harry, this would be a great time to work on that egg clue, because remember the last time you procrastinated a task?
And almost died?
And how I stayed up to 2 a.m. to help you? Like, maybe you should start early. And Harry's just such a procrastinator. He's just like, oh, I have till February, it's fine. And like, I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely me. Whenever I have like, I need end dates for things or I won't do it. And if I see something that's like months away, I'm like, I got so much time for that. And then like the week or the day of comes and I'm just like, shit, like why didn't I start this weeks earlier? And I always do it to myself.
I am the opposite of a procrastinator. I'm like, you know how some people don't write their essay until the night before it's due and they stay up all night writing their essay?
Me?
I stay up all night writing my essay the night it's assigned because the idea of knowing I have to do it is so much more stressful than doing it that I'm like a rip the band-aid off quick kind of gal. Like if I know I have to go to the dentist, I'm booking my appointment immediately. If I need a follow-up, I'm booking it at the reception on my way out. Like I just want the bad things over as quickly as
So
possible.
you are Hermione in this scenario.
But Hermione enjoys it. I don't enjoy it, but I want it as soon as I can, get it done because I will stress about it nonstop between having it done and being assigned it. So I just try and like minimize the stress by doing it quickly.
I just find it so funny that Harry was so stressed about this tournament. And especially the first task, we saw how anxious and stressed he was about what he was going to do. And here he is again, where he's just like, la 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 la. And we know that he almost fucks up this task as well because he waits to the last minute.
He has once again not learned his lesson.
Classic procrastinator. While the trio are kind of goofing off, Fred and George come over and they ask Ron if they can borrow Pigwidgeon because they need to send a letter, obviously. And I'm just wondering, why did they even bother asking Ron? Because obviously they're going to use this to go send a letter to Little Bagman being like, pay up, bitch. And like, why didn't they just use a school owl?
Their joke answer is, well, Ron, we want to ask him to the Yule Ball. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, but what if one of them did take Pigwidgeon to the Yule Ball? That would be such a Fred and George kooky, hilarious time. Poor Pigwidgeon in like a goofy little dress and just George. We don't know who George's date is, so George, it's still an option.
They're kind of a bit hostile when Ron kind of asks, like, pretty normal question. He's like, oh, why do you want my owl for? Like, he's already on sending a letter. Like, what do you need him for? Because I think in general, like, if they don't have an owl themselves, they would just use a school owl. But they're kind of like weirdly evasive about it, and it's not normal for Fred and George. They're pretty like they're jokey when they're being kind of snarky to Ron, but they're not. They seem it's a bit more like sharp. It feels like
Absolutely.
they changed subject, but I'm just like, why didn't they use a school owl in the first place? Why ask Ron for Pigwidgeon?
Maybe because what they're doing is crime, and maybe the school owls might be like they easier to like notice that they're up to crime than Ron's owl. And it's also probably why they don't tell Ron because realistically they are blackmailing a government official, which is a crime. So they don't want Ron to know what they're doing, so he's not aware of it. He can't testify, but they also don't want the school to know. So they're trying to do crime in the most respectful way to prevent their brother from having to commit perjury and to prevent the school from catching on about their crime.
They know Ron's nosy. They're just like, Ron's gonna ask too many questions, but we don't want to use a school owl. But going into the kind of the main topic of this chapter, which is the idea of a dance, a formal.
Wizard prom. Honestly, this chapter, almost more than the actual chapter with the dance, gives me such pre-prom flashbacks.
I feel like the lead up to the dance is always a bit more than like the actual dance.
Oh, 100%. For me, my best memories of dances in high school was doing my hair and makeup and getting dressed at your house with your sister, with the girls. Like that was always our playlist. Our songs were always 100% better. They never played My Chemical Romance at the dances, but we sure as hell played it in Brittany's bedroom.
I do feel like the thing with dances, especially as like a girl experience, is that I think it's more fun getting ready than actually going there because you're getting ready, you're having fun, and you're taking pictures and stuff. And it's just like that time is obviously like I think more fun than the actual dance usually.
Because you can hear each other talking, the music isn't that loud. None of the people who are mean to you are there because you're just at your friend's house. You can dance like idiots around the room while you do your makeup and hair because no one there's judging you because they're your friends.
Exactly.
This chapter reminds me of how stressful any situation was when dates were sort of expected or required because like my nerdy ass was constantly just attending things with the girls. Like I didn't have romantic partners at almost any of the dances. Like for prom, no boys or girls were romantically interested in me. I know, shocking. So I went platonically with one of my friends. I didn't have a boyfriend. I didn't have people wanting to go with me. So I went with a friend.
I didn't even want to go to my prom.
And you know what? In the end, it was really nice to just go with a friend platonically because we didn't have some traumatic breakup after graduation, that makes me like scowl at all my prom pictures. Plus, because we were both sensible ladies, we made sure our corsages that we got each other actually like matched our dresses.
So moving back into the book, finding dates is a big part of this chapter. And Harry actually has girls asking him out. And I'm thinking that's actually pretty progressive for this book when it was written, because I feel like it's pretty heteronormative in the fact that like the boys are asking out girls and they're only going with girls, and no one's like going, like Harry and Ron just should have gone together as friends and they have a partner. It would have been solved.
The slow dance would have been, I mean, I think you want to have one person in each pair of slow dancers that knows what they're doing. I think that's the only reason it would have been weird for them to go as a pair, is it would have been a shit show on the dance floor.
But yeah, it's all pretty heteronormative where, you know, like boys are going with girls, etc. But the fact that like, yeah, 2 or 3 girls ask Harry out, and I'm just like, damn, like,
Okay, Potter. I mean, he is very famous and very rich.
he's super caught off guard as well.
He's like, it's just because I'm a Triwizard champion. And it's like, also you're Harry Potter, very famous, super rich, not a total asshole. You just fought a dragon.
But Fred is like confidence king over here, and you know, Harry and Ron are just kind of like, oh, who are you going with? And he's like, I'm going with Angelina. Hasn't asked her yet, and just like calls across the common room. There's people there watching, and he's just like, hey, go with me. And she's like, you know what? Okay. And it's just like, the confidence that they have is astonishing to me.
And the best part is, from her reaction, we know it's not like an obvious, like it's kind of like, it's not like they're already dating, so obviously you're going together. He was just like, reading this when I was younger, I was like, oh, he's so smooth. I would have said yes to. He's just so like, it's not even like he thinks about who either. He's like, obviously I'm going to go with Angelina because she's the obvious best choice. And like, that's got to be flattering. But also the confidence is like, okay. Like, I was like, okay, Fred. All right. Well, I'm glad they put it in the movies too, because I mean, they put it differently in the movies, but I'm glad they included Fred quickly on the moment asking someone, because, and it being Angelina, because I think that's really nice.
They just have like all the confidence in all the Weasleys. I feel like Percy and Ron are very insecure, and Fred and George are just very confident. We don't get much of like how confident like Bill and Charlie were because we didn't see them at school.
I mean, you got to think Bill was confident. He dates Fleur. I think to approach Fleur, with an exception of Ron.
But is he confident now that he's older and more mature? Because how would he be in school?
Well, he was head boy, and he was like, he had a lot of, I mean, so was Percy, but I think the fact that he was head boy but also has like a dragon tooth as an earring makes me think he probably had big confidence.
So Ron and Harry are kind of freaking out because it's getting like close to the dance. Time's ticking, and like all the good girls are going to be gone, as Fred and George say. And Ron is kind of like spieling at people that he should ask and everything. And Ron's basically saying he wants like, you know, a pretty popular girl, even if she's completely horrible. And Hermione is super offended. And I just feel like this is really rooted in his insecurities of himself. Because I feel like we've seen that Ron wants to appear like socially like a good, like he wants to be popular. He wants people to look up to him. He wants to appear like a desirable option. And I feel like a lot of Ron's dating choices in the series, like why he dates Lavender in the first place, is just wanting to be seen as, you know, desirable and trying to fit in. And I feel like this is a lot where like Hermione brings up Elise Midgen, who has acne, and he's just like, oh, I wouldn't take her. But the thought that like, Ron, you're not taking anyone right now.
Yeah, seriously. It's very like clear that he seeks external validation, and especially at that age, it's very true that sometimes you think your value is based on the value of someone who thinks you have value, you know? And so it's very much like, if a really popular girl likes me, I must be great, but if only a not really popular girl likes me, I must not be great. And it's sad, but it's such a part of growing up.
Yeah, I feel it was hard to understand this when reading it as like, you know, like a 14 or 16-year-old girl closer to Ron, because this is what I'm seeing from other boys and being like, I can't believe he's so shallow, he's so vapid. But like reading it as an adult, you're really like, okay, this is coming from an inside place. And Ron's very insecure in like most of like this part of the series, where he's just really struggling with where he fits in. And so it comes out like he's being kind of vapid and shallow, but really he wants that external validation.
I also think maybe at this point, at 14, with Ron's maturity, he might not really be like that romantically into girls yet. Like he doesn't know what he would like in a romantic partner. So he has to think about like, what do boys like in girls that is romantic? And he's like, well, being pretty and popular, because you know how smart she is. You can't tell from just looking at her, you know? So it's kind of like he's just mimicking the behaviors he sees in males who have already started to be interested in girls. He's like, okay, they like pretty girls, so I should also find a really pretty girl, and then everyone will not question that choice because obviously she's so pretty. Um, so like he doesn't even think like, oh yeah, maybe I want a girl who like really likes Quidditch so I can talk about the Chudley cannons, or maybe I want a girl who really hates divination so we can make jokes about, it's literally just what will look best to the people looking in and not what will make the best experience for me personally. It's that very like, for me as a person with anxiety, I feel it in public all the time where you become super hyper aware and you feel like everyone's watching you and staring at you and judging you, and you behave based on what you presume their interpretations will be instead of like your most authentic self or your most honest to yourself choices and behaviors. And like, it's exhausting and I feel bad for Ron, but that's totally where his brain is at.
We can see where he is kind of like socially and like with himself, because Harry obviously has a real crush on Cho, and there's things that he says that she's pretty, but also she likes Quidditch, and there's things that he likes about her. But with Ron, we only see him really interested in the Velas from the World Cup and Fleur, who are just very pretty, and he doesn't really have a connection with any of them.
Definitely.
But speaking of Harry really wants to ask out Cho, and him and Ron kind of have a deal that, like, you know what, they're just going to go ask out who they want to ask out, and they're going to come back, and they're going to have dates set up. And Harry wants to ask out Cho, but she's always with her girlfriends. And he's like, he thought that he was going to try to get her alone when she was going to the bathroom, but he's like, no, they go together there too.
Okay, yeah, that's fact. But also, to be fair, specifically in the Harry Potter franchise, Moaning Myrtle went to the bathroom alone, she died. Ginny went to the bathroom alone, she got possessed by an evil diary. Hermione went to the bathroom alone, she got attacked by a giant troll. The girls' bathrooms at Hogwarts are dangerous. Safety in numbers. Also, what if you need a tampon and you don't have one on you? Safety in numbers.
Yeah, I just love the humor of Harry, trying to find Cho and talk to her, and she's always with someone. And Harry's kind of awkward, but he does kind of get out of his comfort zone, and he asks Cho in front of her friends, hey, can I speak to you privately? And that takes a lot of guts, because
big Gryffindor bravery there.
I would hate talking to someone in front of a crowd, especially at 14.
And she's a year older than him, which is just like very impressive for him as a younger, confidence. Good job, Harry. I mean, maybe not confidence, but he believes maybe in himself.
He has to do it for the pact with Ron, but Harry asks Cho out, and it's so awkward and relatable, and of course, Cho is kind of like, she's not bad, but she does tell him that she already agreed to go with Cedric.
But she does say she's really sorry. And I feel like there's a part of her that like would have absolutely said yes to Harry if Cedric hadn't have already asked her.
Yeah, because that was one of my questions, if she would have gone with Harry if Cedric hadn't asked her. Because from what we only know Cho from after dating Cedric and losing Cedric. And then she dates Harry kind of afterwards. So we don't know if it's like fully because she liked him before or because of the connection with Cedric. So I'm wondering, if Cedric hadn't asked her, would she go with Harry?
I think so, unless there's a lot of closeness with her and Cedric that we don't know about yet, just because there's no way you know what I mean? Like, I think she would have said yes because Harry's a nice guy, they have some stuff in common, and it's not like she was going to hold out for Cedric unless she had a clue he was going to ask her. So I think she probably would have gone with Harry, and I think they would have had a perfectly fine time.
But yeah, Harry finds out that he does take the rejection really well.
He's a reasonable guy.
But it is hard for him to realize that Cedric is the one that asked her, and basically Cedric beat him out for it, for taking her to the dance.
I mean, honestly, good for Cedric. Harry sort of stole his chance at being the star in the Quidditch in the Triwizard Tournament, his one opportunity to truly shine. But, in the end, Cedric got to take, the girl they both wanted to the ball. So, he beat Harry in one thing, Yeah,
because Harry's kind of opinion of Cedric quickly changes, and he's like, you know what? Cedric's actually an airhead.
He's not even that handsome. He's no Bill Weasley.
Everyone really only cares about him because he's conventionally attractive. And, he's just repeating everything that all the boys have been saying about Cedric. And I just find it funny because at the beginning of the chapter, he was like, oh, Cedric did him a solid, and he thinks that he got him to stop all, like, the Hufflepuffs and everything to stop harassing him. Yeah, but Harry, he goes back to the common room dejected because he got rejected.
Dejected because he got rejected. That was beautiful, Tori.
No matter how much Harry embarrasses himself, Ron's done it 10 times worse. Because as he comes into the common room, Ron's there with Ginny, and Ron is just, in shock. for how much he embarrassed himself. And I think if you've ever been like super embarrassed and you just like want to curl into a ball and die, can relate to Ron here. Been there, done that. But Ron basically asked Fleur out in front of, I think, everyone in the entrance hall while she was talking to Cedric. And Jenny says that he basically screamed at her to go to the dance with him. And then she looks at him and he looks at her and it's super awkward and he just leaves. And I'm thinking, this is such an awkward but kind of funny moment. And I wonder when if Bill and Fleur, when they're together, kind of tease Ron about this moment, because how is it gonna be that like you're like, oh, remember the time my brother-in-law asked me out to a dance and he screamed at me in front of all these people and then he ran away?
I mean, I think Fleur's first thought would be, thank goodness he didn't ask me in a very cool, calm manner, or else I would have gone on a date with him and it would have been weird to later marry his brother. So like, good thing he yelled at me and I was too traumatized to respond. Phew. But I also don't think Ron is Fleur's type.
I don't think Fleur ever would have gone with Ron. He's a lot younger than her.
I think she would have been a little bit socially traumatized when he showed up in his dress robes.
Jenny is here comforting Ron as a good sister would, and she's actually, this is like one of the first times we see her kind of conversing with Harry, and she's talking really normally. Like the last two books, it's been so painfully obvious of her crush. She can't even look at Harry sometimes. She's always like knocking things over, embarrassing herself. But here she's talking with Harry, filling him in, and it's just very normal. But we do kind of tell that she's still a bit hung up on him.
Yeah, especially when she hears Harry talking about Cho. You can see her being immediately sad that Harry wanted to ask Cho specifically, and how sad he is that she couldn't.
Yeah, the reminder that he wanted someone else.
Just like that little stab in the heart, you know?
Ron decides, I guess, to bring Neville down because he's so upset about embarrassing himself. He's just like, guess what, Harry? Neville asked Hermione. It's not funny. And I'm like, Neville explains it. It makes total sense. He's like, I don't even think Neville really asked her as like in a romantic, like, I want to take you to this dance as like a date kind of thing. He's just like, Hermione's really nice to me. We're friends. Like,
she helps me with homework.
Yeah, I think she'd be, and she's a girl, and I think this would be fun. I think we'd have fun at the dance together.
I think if Victor didn't ask her, I think she probably would have said yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Hermione would have gone, I'm sure.
Neville's nice. Hermione's not so caught up in social standing, you know?
I think Neville would be a great date.
I think I'd have a great time with Neville at the dance, you know? I just think the funniest part is Ron realizing it. Like, oh, Neville's right. You are a girl. He's just so brilliant.
Ron!
Ron is just absolutely the yellow crayon, for sure. Just the brightest crayon in the box.
He takes a while for things to come to him.
Just finally realizing 4 years later that Hermione is a girl.
I think that because Harry, Ron, and Hermione are friends and they're just so used to Hermione being a friend, I think this is any kind of situation where you kind of have a friend in a box that's like their friend box, and then when you actually see someone else have them as like a romantic option, I think having Neville ask her made Ron realize, wait a minute, people are asking Hermione to go to this dance. Hermione's going to go to this dance. Hermione also needs a partner, and realizing that like Hermione is an option. But yeah, it's this whole pivotal moment where Hermione's there, and Jenny is Jenny like, they're laughing about Neville asking Hermione out, which, whatever, Ron, make yourself feel better. But she's like, they're here being sad because they got turned down. I love savage Jenny. But yeah, Ron realizes Hermione's a girl. Like, he was hit over the head, and he's just like, oh my god, Hermione, you're a girl. You can go with one of us. I'm like, Ron, you're a little behind on the message here. But it was funny that Ron says that you could go with one of us. He doesn't say him. And I'm just wondering, like, how would he feel about Hermione going with Harry? Because Harry is the one that really needs a date. Ron could go to the stag. Harry needs to dance to open this ball, so he needs a partner.
I think Ron would be fine with it at first, and then maybe during the slow dance, he might feel a little twinge and be like, what am I feeling? I don't know this feeling. And then later on identify it as jealousy. But because he knows Harry wanted to ask someone else and didn't even consider Hermione an option either, I don't think initially it would bother him that much, especially because like Harry really does need a date to this shindig.
I do think there'd be some kind of jealousy, but he doesn't register it as jealousy because Harry does get everything in Ron's point of view, and then seeing him kind of realizing like he would have wanted to go with Hermione and Harry is going with Hermione, he's just like, well, this is another thing Harry gets, and it's just kind of like his insecurities there. But I feel like upset. But Hermione has her girl power moment where she tells Ron off, and she's like, just because it's taken you 3 years to notice, Ron, doesn't mean no one else has spotted I'm a girl.
Seriously, you tell him, girl. But honestly, in this whole situation, just poor Hermione. If the boys weren't idiots, one could have easily asked her as a friend, and it would have saved all of them so much stress. Plus, they know each other, they get along, they have, mutual interests, things to talk about. They would have fun, and it kind of feels like Harry and Ron should have been fighting over which one gets to ask her from the very beginning if they had more than one shared brain cell. You know what I mean? She'd be like, oh, I should ask Hermione. Wait, can I ask Hermione? Which one of us gets to ask Hermione?
I just feel that Harry and Ron are quite oblivious and they're just dumb boys at this age. And I feel like because Hermione has been a friend and she's not someone who's just very overly feminine, that they don't really register her as being like an option until they see her being an option for other people. They're like, wait, Hermione is not just like one of us.
She is one of us, but she's the girl one of us. Ugh.
Hermione tells Ron that she's not lying, that she is going with someone else, and that's why she's not going with Neville. And Ron's kind of saying like, oh, you're lying. You can just go with one of us. Like, we're sorry for making you mad. Whatever. And I just feel like, is it Ron's immaturity at this point that makes him believe Hermione is lying? Or is it more like he tells himself that to soften the blow because he realizes at this moment that he really does want to go with Hermione?
Interesting.
Because I always go back and forth with how when Ron realized he had feelings, and I always feel like it takes him a while because he is rather immature at this point in the series.
I think maybe there's a degree to which he struggles with understanding things external to himself. So he thinks that the knowledge he has is the same amount of knowledge, and the things he notices is the same amount of things everyone else would notice. And so there's maybe a part of him that thinks, if it took me this long to notice Hermione was a girl and I spent all this time with her, there's no way someone else noticed before me. You know what I mean? I think there's a part of him that might just be like, I just noticed. There's no way someone else.
Also, Ron's just used to having Hermione around, too. The idea that, she wouldn't be going with him, well, he's known her for so long, and they've been friends for so long, and it's just like, well, why wouldn't you go with me? I'm the ideal date. We've been friends for so long.
I also really love that Ginny knows who asked Hermione. I like to think that they have, a really nice friendship.
Yeah, that was my question. I was wondering if Ginny actually knew who Hermione was going with, and she told her, or if she was just standing up for Hermione.
Oh, I think she absolutely knows. I really do like to think that they have a nice friendship, and we just never see it because everything's from Harry's perspective.
I feel like Hermione needs someone like Ginny to, a girl that's not just dumb like Harry and Ron are.
Yeah, first of all, I think female friendships are so important, especially when you're becoming a teenager and you're starting to deal with just hormones and growing into your body, and someone to lend you a tampon once in a while, or someone to be there for you when the boys in your life are idiots. Harry and Ron are being such nincompoops, and it's so important that she has Ginny there to be like, you guys are nincompoops. It's important that she have that.
I was wondering, when do we think that Victor asked Hermione out? Because she doesn't talk to Harry and Ron, obviously.
I also think there's a part of Hermione, especially when the boys, these guys, don't ask her out the first day after the announcement as the obvious friendship option. There's a part of her that I think, especially when she ends up wearing light blue, that has this Cinderella moment in her head where she shows up to the ball dressed beautiful and all eyes are kind. Even though she's not really that girl, there's a part of us, especially when we're younger, that has read so many of those Disney-esque fairy tales that we, even if it's not who you are as a person, you think this is what I should want. And so I think there's a part of her that likes the idea of that reveal, showing up, having yourself being in makeup for the first time, in a beautiful dress for the first time any of them have seen you, with a super cool date. I think keeping the secret isn't just to hold it over Harry and Ron's heads. It's also preserving that moment, that big reveal moment.
I think it's also a bit of insecurity as well, because obviously Victor Crumb's this really big shot Quidditch player, and he's the one that told her, oh, he's been, wanting to ask her out for, ages, and he really wants to get to know her. And Hermione is someone that I think she kind of disparages typical feminine activities as vapid and not worth her time, and she just is mostly seen for her intelligence, and she likes that. But I think a part of her does like to be seen as desirable and a romantic interest, and obviously she does hold some of those romantic ideals too, and it's kind of think she keeps it to herself because she's worried about how people will perceive her, as she's not the typical girly girl, and she doesn't want people gossiping about her, and she's not quite sure about it.
There's certainly a chance some of the girls would be like, ew, he asked Hermione, why? And like hearing that would just be so hurtful. So to wait until you look your best and you're ready and you're prepared to show up and have no one question it. Oh, Hermione's making it up. She's just pretending, to be like, you can't question, you can't deny it. I look good. I'm here.
Yeah, I love that Hermione has like kind of like her moment where like, all eyes are on her and she gets to kind of show a different side to her because I do feel like your first dance, I think, as like, a teen is like, especially like we grew up in a small town, so like we grew up with everyone we went to school with, and it's kind of the same for them at Hogwarts. But like, people have known her as one way since she was 11, and it is kind of her time to show a different side to her that she's grown up and there is more hurt to her than just like being like this really gifted, smart girl.
A butterfly emerging from her chrysalis.
But Hermione is done with the boys and Ron especially, so she bounces, and Ron's still trying to figure this out, and he's just like, you know what, Ginny, you go with Harry and I'll figure something out. And Ginny is such a good sport because obviously she would love to go with Harry. She obviously still has feelings for him, but she already agreed to go with Neville after Hermione said no to him, and she's standing by Neville. She's just like, I said I'd go to Neville.
I think it's hilarious that Ron just tells Ginny to go with Harry. It's so bossy. He's just like, okay, Ginny, you'll go with Harry. I mean, it is a bit of a shame because I know Ginny would have loved it and it would have been like a dream come true for her. And I honestly feel like this is one of the moments that like for the next 3 years, Ginny like daydreams about if she had gone to the Yule Ball with Harry and imagines herself dancing with Harry and how great that would be.
I feel like this might have been a pivotal moment in her getting over Harry because the Yule Ball's where she meets her boyfriend, Michael, I think his name is. And that's when she kind of has a conversation with Hermione where she needs to, like, date other people and not be so hung up on Harry because Harry's not really interested. And I just don't know if Harry would be, if they went together, Harry would be in the right space for Ginny anyway.
Yeah, he's not mature enough for her, even though she's a year younger. Like, she's kind of too cool for him. Is that, like, Harry needs to, like, I love nerds. I am a nerd, and I'm not cool enough for Ginny either. But like, I think Harry has to like become a bit more.
Harry had to grow into himself a bit more.
Yeah, he's not ready. He's not. You know what I mean? You can be the right person at the wrong time, and I think she would have been the right person at the wrong time. And I love that she went with Neville. He's such a sweetie, and like, I'm glad she's. And you know what? I hope they have the best time.
I do think it's interesting that Ron subconsciously was just like, okay, Jenny, you go with Harry, because we do have these kind of moments where Ron is unintentionally kind of pairing Harry and Ginny together. Especially when Ginny starts dating and she has these boyfriends and Ron's just kind of like, pick someone better while looking at Harry, or just kind of, placing them together. So maybe a little like unintentional or subconscious foreshadowing there, being like, Ginny and Harry are going to end up together.
I mean, I think Ron's first thought is, now that I realize Hermione is a girl, I realize there are lots of people who are girls that I forgot about. And obviously I shan't take my own sister to the prom because yikes. But Harry, not actually related to her. So that's not weird.
But Harry decides to take this, in stride. He's like, we just need dates already. So Puberty comes in. He's like, you know what? Puberty's a girl. Let's see if she'll go. So Harry asks Puberty and she says yes. And then he suggests, he asks Lavender to go with Ron, which I think is also funny because they end up dating in 2 years. But Lavender's going with Seamus. So then he asks Puberty, like, who do you know that will go with Ron? He's just being a bro. And yeah, Puberty suggests Hermione, which is interesting. So I'm like, they're roommates with Hermione. So I'm like, what does Puberty know? Does she kind of have a feeling that Hermione has, feelings for Ron? Or does she see them together? Because also kind of, does she know about Hermione's feelings in Half-Blood Prince as well? If she's already kind of like has Hermione and Ron like as a pair in her head.
I don't think Hermione's like that into Ron yet, even if she's a little bit into Ron. But I love the idea that she's like talking about her feelings with the girls because I really want that for her.
I don't think Hermione would speak to Puberty and Lavender.
Yeah, they seem maybe a bit gossipy.
I do think Puberty is pretty perceptive.
Yeah.
And I could see her like picking up on things because I don't think Hermione knows or even like really wants to know Puberty and Lavender as friends compared to Harry and Ron. They just don't have a lot in common either, but I feel like you pick things up living with someone.
Yeah, and there's also the possibility that because they're still really young kids, the idea that a girl hangs out with two boys, she must have a crush on one of them. And they're like, well, Harry already has a date. Maybe Ron's the one. She said, why doesn't he? They're just thinking she must because that's what people were like when you're younger, when you hang out with someone of the weird heteronormative and like weirdly like the opposite of infantilizing. I don't know what it is when people see two kids hanging out of opposite genders, like, oh, maybe they'll get married one day. And it's like, or maybe they're making mud pies and pretending to fight dragons, and that's all it's ever going to be. And that's cool. Like, lay off.
I do think that, like, when you see a girl hang out with, like, boys a lot, you're just like, I think naturally, if Harry's not going with Hermione, like, well, she obviously would go with one of them. Yeah, but they're also very curious about who Hermione's going with. They live for the tea, which I get too. Yeah, and that's where the chapter ends, and we'll be jumping into the actual dance next chapter. But do you have any other remarks before we wrap up?
Any other remarks? I like pretty dresses. And I love that they wrote something that's basically prom into the franchise, because I do think it is a big sort of moment, a big transitional milestone in growing up.
It's very much of the school experience. Yeah, because it still reminds us that they are still in school, and I feel like dances are a big part of, like, you know, growing up in school, like your first big dance where there is, like, you know, dating and, you know, who's going with who and kind of just, you know, the social scene and everything. And so it kind of, like, you know, even though it is a book about magic, it's still tying us back to, like, you know,
reality.
Our reality where, like, everyone can relate to that.
It's reminding the readers who are aging with the book, which was us, that you're aging with them. They're reminding you that the social situations you are starting to face for the first time are the same social situations that those characters are starting to face for the first time. And it's what makes it so important to kids in our age group who grew up with the books, because we truly grew up with the characters and they grew up with us.
Even reading it back, I can still remember those moments of reading this as a kid. And, you know, like, it's still so relatable even at 30. Like, Harry's, you know, awkward asking out of Cho, and, you know, just like the whole concept of who's going with who, and, like, the beginning of, like, feelings and everything. And it still holds up now. So thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll be back next time to discuss chapter 23 of Goblet of Fire, the Yule Ball. I love the Yule Ball chapter. It's so chaotic and fun in the best way. If you have any comments on today's episode, you can email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on social media at potterrevisited, or you can leave a comment on Spotify, and we'll see you next time. Bye!